The one that was detected was a code black defect. That track should have been taken out of service at that period of time.
That is a Deputy General Manager for Operations, Rob Troop, speaking at a press conference earlier this week, explaining that track that caused that nightmarish commute that you had on Friday on Metro, they knew about it back in January. Joining us right now, D.C. Councilmember Jack Evans, also sitting on the WMAL board. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Yeah, glad to be with you. We've been talking about
this. We've been talking about Metro problems for quite some time. Really got intense, obviously, after the L'Enfant Plaza horrible disaster in January. And now this latest situation. We had Robert Thompson, Dr. Gridlock, very influential transit reporter from the Washington Post yesterday morning. And we asked him specifically, what is the problem with the leadership at Metro right now? Why can't we get a new CEO, for instance? Why is Jack Weckwo still there, the interim CEO? Listen to what he said.
The general manager left in January, and they still don't have somebody in place who can make permanent decisions on policy and personnel. That's what they need to do first and foremost.
Well, why can't they do that? Why can't, they got
squabbling among board members.
Really?
Well, it certainly is a mess, and if you were a top transit official in the U.S., you'd want to think long and hard about taking on this challenge. You might say to yourself, well, how much worse can it possibly get? But the board members have been battling over exactly what type of general manager they want. It's kind of a Goldilocks thing going on.
All right, Mr. Evans, you're one of those board members. He went on to say, by the way, we probably won't have a GM until the end of this year, which means really a 12-month window here where we are leadership. What's going on there, and what's with the squabbling?
The squabbling, if there really was one, was a debate among the board members whether we needed a transit-oriented general manager or a general manager who was more of a turnaround person, somebody who could fix an organization. Right now, we are all united, the board is, in finding the best person for the job. We have solicited through our search firm nationwide people who might be interested, and more importantly, board members are submitting names of people that they know that may be interested and may be really a good fit for the job. So we're hoping we get somebody on board in the fall. But we have to find the right person for this, really a good leader that not only knows how to run a company, but who can really instill in our workforce a real sense of urgency to get this thing fixed. So, we're moving forward as fast as we can, and hopefully we'll get a general manager in there in the fall.
Councilman Evans, you and I have known each other over the years. I've talked to you many, many times, and I have a lot of respect for you. But it seems to me that when we talk about the problems at Metro, this was a problem that was identified almost a month before the derailment occurred. If this happened in a business or in private enterprise, people would be running around with their hair on fire trying to find out why this fell through the cracks. I don't feel that same sense of urgency in the way this matter is being addressed.
Well, I have to say the board does feel that urgency. When we found out about this 24 hours ago, like everyone else at the news conference, the board, the executive committee, and the board itself instructed Jack Weckwo, who's our acting general manager, to get back to us by today, preliminarily, and a full investigation in 10 days, so it'll be sometime next week, with a full accounting for what happened here. Somebody knew about this, and they didn't do anything. And when we find out who, how, what, if it's appropriate disciplinary action, firing will take place. I, for one, and I know there's a number of members on the board are really outraged at this. I came on the board in late January and found a system. I had been on the board in the 1990s, from 91 to 2000. And when I left there, Metro was a good running organization. What I've come back to is one that's not. And it infuriates me that, number one, the system was allowed to deteriorate like it did. And number two, that these problems keep happening. And this most recent one is the most egregious, that we actually knew in July that the track was faulty and kept running trains over the track.
Yeah.
And luckily, the derailment took place when there was nobody on the train.
I got to ask, though, what's worse, the fact that they knew and they didn't do anything about it, or the fact that you go back to what was the source of the fire and smoke incident in L'Enfant Plaza in January, the fact that they didn't have the proper insulation installed on the electrical connections there on those tracks, and they didn't know about that? What's worse, knowing and not doing anything, or the fact that they didn't know that problem in L'Enfant Plaza, and has anyone been fired over that?
Well, there's no worse or not worse. They're both outrageous. And again,
but someone died in that incident, council member, and I haven't seen it. Has anyone been fired for that one?
I don't believe anyone's been fired over that. And I believe that, again, there's a sense I get at Metro of people react to problems. They don't progressively go out and find them, although with the most recent one, we actually knew about it and didn't react to it anyway. And so when we get to the bottom of this one, I believe there will be serious repercussions for those who were involved.
But, this is not the first time this has happened. I mean, in 2006, December of 2006, there was a derailment, and they had known about it. Let's see, I'm trying to read the details here. They had known about it for 2 months before they had the accident, and they didn't solve the problem. This is not something new.
Yeah, it's a culture that has to change. And again, as long as I'm on the board, I have been very clear that I won't tolerate this type of thing, as have other board members. And when we get a new general manager in, we hope we'll be able to really shake things up and get the system back where it needs to be. It's a big system. It's a great system, but it has really fallen into disrepair from, I would say, bad management, bad leadership, everything that goes with it, and a lack of resources. And again, you've got a system that really needs, I will give you the number, and it's a huge one. If you want to put this system back in top-notch shape, to do everything that needs to be done, to expand it in the ways that we have talked about, to take care of the finances, which are still in disarray, the unfunded pension liabilities, et cetera, you're looking at $25 billion over the next 10 years. And I'm going to make it very clear to the public, which I want to get on board on this, and most important to the elected officials in Maryland and Virginia, that, if you want a first-class transit system, you're going to have to pay for it. Otherwise, we're going to have these problems over and over and over again.
So you're going to make
leadership
that case,
and lack of resources.
Sir, you're going to make that case to the public, and
Absolutely.
doesn't the public
yes. wants a good public transit system.
And doesn't the public have a right to say, listen, Councilmember Evans, you've raised our fares, you've pumped tax money into this already, and you've just admitted that there has been leadership and management and cultural problems there. You haven't effectively spent the money up until now. How dare you come and ask for more without fixing the problems first?
Well, again, what I come back to is we have new leadership over at Metro, and these are the resources that are going to be necessary to have a first-class transit system.
Can I ask you?
And I'm going to guarantee, as is the leadership, that the resources we have are going to be spent wisely, and that we are going to make this a system that works for everybody. But it's going to take both. It's going to take leadership. It's going to take resources. But the idea that you're presenting is not having more resources because it hasn't worked in the past is probably not a good approach.
How often do you ride Metro? I'm curious.
Not often. I ride it, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 times a week, maybe at the most. Bus every once in a while, but not that often.
Would you consider having writers on the WMAL board? Right now, the WMAL board is just appointed officials and politicians. What about, why not have the writers have a voice on the board as well?
The last thing I need is a bigger board. We already have 16 members, which is way too low.
Oh, we can get rid of some of the politicians if you want.
That would be fine by me. I think that we do have, certain ridership committees that people sit on that are able to give us input. I don't know that that's the reason that Metro is the way it is. But I am going to be, though, hosting Metro meetings in all 8 wards in the District of Columbia beginning in September. And I'll have all the board members from the district there. I will have all Metro officials there. And I want people from the public to come to these meetings and tell us what their experiences are. If you ride Metro every day, if you ride the bus every day, what can we do to make this thing better and really listen and accomplish things, which is something Metro has not been doing up to this point.
Councilmember Evans, I hope that the public does go to those hearings, and also I hope that you continue to have this dialogue with us. I feel like since we talk about it so much and talk to the listeners and riders out there, that we voice many of their concerns too, and it's good for you to be on Mornings on the Mall so that they can hear you. Thanks so much for joining us as always.